Good morning, Aurora. Good morning, Aurora. Good morning, Aurora. The time is 9:04 a.m. and you are listening to and watching Good Morning, Aurora, the second largest city's first daily news podcast. Doing things early is something that I pride myself on. You should always get your breaks done, and if you need to get your breaks done, the earlier the better. But besides that little tidbit of information I want to give you guys, today I'm proud to announce that we have a new guest on the program representing a new business, and she is a friend of a mutual friend named Jim Cherry. Her name is Sabrina Alonzo. How you feeling?
Good morning, everyone.
All right. The CEO of Jack Spice.
Yes, that's
Very
right.
cool. Very cool. So first of all, it's great to meet you. And once
you.
again, thank you very much to our friend Jim Cherry, who is an author of The Lion Communique. He's been on our show many times. He mentioned you and the amazing work you were doing, and he
Okay.
connected us. So
All right.
good
Yeah.
guy.
Thank
Yep,
you.
yep.
Appreciate you.
So before we get into Jack Spice, how are you feeling today?
I'm feeling pretty good. I mean, I'll be honest. I've had one cup of coffee, so I'm kind of.
That's it?
I woke up probably about 4 a.m. So,
Okay.
I'm getting there.
Right. I typically do 3. When I haven't had only had 1 or like 2.5, I can definitely feel like, I still need that ringer to bring it all home.
I've had one, so
Okay.
I'm okay.
Yep. And where are you? Are you from? Are you an Aurora native?
I live in Joliet. I've been in Joliet for probably about 7 years,
Okay.
but I'm originally from the south side of Chicago.
Okay. All right. Now let's talk about Jack Spice. Tell us about the company and when it started.
Okay, so Jack Spice is a salt-free seasoning spices brand that I started I started officially a year ago, but I started making spices a few years ago. When I was diagnosed with high blood pressure, my blood pressure was 190 over 114.
Wow.
It was stroke level. I had a routine physical, and they were kind of perplexed. Have you ever been diagnosed with high blood pressure? I'm like, no. And they ordered me to the ER. When I got to the ER, I told them I was there. They told me that they could not let me leave until they got my blood pressure down. Me being kind of a workaholic, I said, look, I can't stay here. I got to go. And they said, well, if you have a stroke, you're not going to be going anywhere. And I said, okay, well, there's that. And so they gave me medication. I got it down a little bit. But that was kind of eye-opening for me because my dad, who's Jack and Jack Spice, he also had high blood pressure, hypertension, and he died at like 50. And I was in my late 40s, so I knew it was real. And I had to make better decisions with food. And I started with, I don't like to bash other products, but I started with the products that were on the market that were salt-free. And since I love to cook, after a few months, I kind of felt like it just wasn't doing what I needed it to do. So I started mixing my own. And then seasonal salt, that was my first one, my signature. And then for each thing that I like to cook, I started making different spices and seasoning. I'm like, okay, I'm having fish today. So and I think I'm going to whip this up.
Right.
And now I have over 40 spices and seasonings and essentially everything for almost everything except this weekend I was at the Joliet Mall and one of my customers said, can you do meatloaf mix? I said, you know what? I'm looking into it.
Okay, that's
So
a new one coming.
she said, can you do meatloaf?
Okay.
So I've been researching and, tasting my meatloaf in different flavors. So I'll be having meatloaf coming out soon.
Very cool. So I'm interested to know what was that change like, to get your palate acclimated to different tastes and different seasonings, especially the lack of salt.
Right. So I think that the first thing I wanted to live. And I'll be honest with you, more than just living, the things that scare me the most, and I always say this, is heart attack and stroke. I'm 52 years old. I don't want to have a stroke because the recovery time for stroke, if at all, could be 2+ years.
Right.
And I'm very busy.
Right.
And I cannot, that's what keeps me in line.
Sure.
But when I started mixing my own flavors, I made it to, I mean, it was for me. You know, I wasn't doing it for like other people. I was
Right.
just doing it for me. And it wasn't very difficult because it tasted pretty similar to what I was doing with the salt. So, you know, I didn't feel like I missed anything. But you know, after a few years, you know, my friends were like, you should do it for other people. I'm like, I don't have time. I'm busy.
Right.
And then last year I said, you know what? I think I got time this year. And so I started looking into it. But it wasn't difficult at all because I had an option. So it wasn't that I was an incredible salt lover. I just, whatever was at the grocery store, I just bought.
Pretty much. Yep.
And if you look at the top 20 foods that cause hypertension, most of those are processed foods. So I wasn't even a real salt person. It was just, you know, things like hot dogs and lunch meat, things like that. And that was kind of surprising to me because I thought it was, you know, shaking the salt shaker, but it really isn't. It's
Right.
the hidden salt.
Exactly. That's a good one. Always read the labels. Read the labels on the different chemicals and ingredients and all the stuff that's inside of you know, the stuff we take for granted, like that Lunchable. Talking about those packs of meat, man. If you flip it over and you read, it is just salt, nitrates, and
And if I may, I was a big, you know, huge fan of the pre-made salads. So my favorite is the Caesar salad. And if you literally go to a grocery store and turn it around, the salad, you know, the chicken Caesar salad, and they
Right.
got the Southwest salads, those, I turned it around and it had like 800 milligrams of soda. I was really surprised. I was so surprised. And this was 3 months ago. And I was really surprised because I was like, oh, you know, it's a salad. I'm doing good.
Right.
But now that I'm in tune with, you know, I was like, wait, is that, I'm like, this can't be right.
it's taking me back because I used to work an office job. I used to work in corporate America once upon a time in my life, and that's what we used to do. We used to go to like the little super Walmart next door, get a sub sandwich,
Yep.
and then get that salad with the chicken
Yep.
on the inside, and you just dump
Yep. That's
it.
the
Man,
one.
holy cow.
Yeah.
And just like you just said, I was swearing that we're eating a little bit healthier.
I was making, what was I making? I was buying some, was it peas? I was making a chicken fettuccine, and I actually
Oh.
posted this on my social media. I think it was
Is that
4
on
or 5
Instagram?
months
Where can I
ago.
find that?
And I was, you know, wanting some peas, you know, so I went to Walmart just to get a little can of Del Monte peas. And I think it was like 300 milligrams for a little can of peas. And I was really surprised. And so I put those down and went to the frozen section. Now, the frozen section is more, you know, it didn't have the salt in it, the sodium, but the little can did.
Okay, so you're talking about like the frozen bags of peas, the frozen vegetables.
Right.
Yeah.
I ended up getting those, but I didn't want that much. I just wanted a little tiny can.
Right.
And I had to put it down.
Okay.
And I did post that because it's the little things, the little hidden things that you don't think about. That's, you know.
Which could really make or break your dish too, depending on what you're trying to do as well. So I guess when you're talking about healthier options when it comes to the seasoning, perhaps we can do without some of the other garnishments that we put on our food and everything like that.
I think it's really hard to do because it's interesting because if you look at any of my social media posts, website, I never use the word healthy. I never use that word. And I think that I use my dad, who's the Jack and Jack Spice, as a guide because if you told someone like him, you know, oh, this is healthy, he would have never eaten it. I mean, seriously, he would have never eaten it. So I never use that word. And, you know, me personally, I use the 80-20 rule. I make right food choices 80% of the time. And 20% of the time, you know, I might get a little pizza from Walmart or something. But I think it's important that it's a lifestyle. It's not a diet. It's just a way of life. This past weekend, I had some new customers, and they bought 15 bottles from me.
Congrats.
Yeah, 15 bottles. Like, that's a couple that is, I mean, they're changing their lifestyle.
That's awesome.
15 bottles.
That's amazing. Yep.
It is amazing.
Changing your lifestyle in a positively healthy fashion is very good. Takes a little bit of time to get that kind of discipline down, but when you do, the benefits are awesome.
I don't think, you know, when I started this journey, and again, I never imagined this. It was just for me. it didn't, as mentioned, like there were things that I was afraid of because my dad died so
Stroke and
young
heart attack,
of,
right.
and it was just, do I want to be that person? And sometimes when I'm at the farmers markets and I talk to my customers, they're like, well, you don't look like a Jack. And I'm like, well, Jack is my dad's name and he didn't make it. I'm honest, he didn't make it. He couldn't change his ways. He couldn't do without the salt. But I don't know if back then, there were a lot of options. I know Mrs. Dash has about 13 spices and seasonings. They've been around since 1981. And it kind of stops right there. And then Kinder's has like one or two. I know they
Right.
have a lemon pepper. But it's really not, they're not really doing it because I think there's no skin in the game.
Right.
I started it because I eat with it.
Right.
And my default is salt free. Their default is salted. Like I'm doing pickles right now. I'm about to start doing pickles. And I had to, have my pickles lab tested because, they say that with the salt in it, it helps in the preservation of it. And
Right.
but I've read, information that said it actually doesn't. It's just for the taste. And so I'm back and forth with the health department and, looking at USDA guidelines. And I'm like, look, so yesterday I actually got an email and I was so excited. They're like, oh, no, you're fine. You don't need to put the salt in there. And as long as you have the pepper, the pickle to the vinegar ratio, you're good. And I was like, I was so
Pickle to
excited.
vinegar ratio.
Right.
Okay.
So, for example, if you use 4 pounds of pepper, 4 pounds of cucumbers, you have to use 4 cups of vinegar. So, if you use 10, pounds of cucumbers, you have to use 10 cups of vinegar.
What?
So, everything else is just taste. And so, my local health department was trying to say, "Oh no, you need it exactly like that." And I've had people try to convince me, "Well, just put a little salt in it. It's okay." And I'm sitting here thinking, these people, they don't have hypertension. It's just okay. It'll be fine. And I'm thinking, and I almost bought into it. But then I said, you know what? No. Jack Spice is a salt-free brand, not a low-salt brand. So I'm going to, whatever it takes, if I have to, go all the way to the USDA, then that's what I just have to do, and it'll just be what that is.
Absolutely.
And then they said, well, if anybody's going to do it, it's you. And so yesterday when I got that email from Illinois Extension for the USDA guidelines, they're like, oh, no, you're fine. And I'm like, oh, my God, this is awesome.
It's a good win. It's a good win.
So, yeah, today I'll be making pickles. So
when the government sees things your way, that's a good win.
But everybody was trying to tell me, no, you need the salt. You need the salt in there because that's part of the preservation process. And I'm thinking, I'm not a scientist, but vinegar is what preserves.
Right.
Not the salt. But
Right.
they're trying to, since they've been doing it that way for so long, it's hard to kind of break away from that.
Yeah. Yep. Hard to break away from that. We're talking about the different foods and things like that, and African Americans, unfortunately we suffer from things like high blood pressure and all those different ailments, and as you mentioned a little bit gently about cultural norms and things like that, sometimes it's hard to break away from the ox roaster grill full of meat, sausages,
Right.
Polish, rib tips, steaks, butterflied, whatever. It's very difficult, and I think about the choices and everything you're talking about right now. Just now, these days, you do see McCormick and Mrs. Dash, some of these other ones, very gently experiment, like one selection of 0 MSG, which is a drop in the bucket health-wise. But,
No sugar.
But exactly. But they just started trying to make a little blip of a presence. It's not enough. So you having that complete no salt model and stock and brand is very, very admirable.
And I don't think, well, thank you. I don't think that they're doing it on purpose.
Sure.
I think
Right.
that they don't think about it
Sure.
because nobody's really making a big deal about it.
Exactly. There's nobody up there in corporate saying we're not
Right.
going to give them 0. Yeah. Nobody's
I mean,
doing
they're
that.
doing a great job with sugar now. Like I was at the grocery store a couple of weeks ago, and I was making some ribs, and I normally don't like barbecue sauce on my ribs. I like them dry. But Sweet Baby Ray's got like sugar free. I was like, oh, they got sugar free and this free. I was like, wait, wow,
Okay.
this is awesome. But I want to tell you a little story about, you talk about cultural norms, and by the way, I have a collard green mix and everything. People are like, what?
You got a collard green mix?
I do.
Oh,
I do. I have a
Lord.
collard green mix.
Let a brother write that down.
I have a jerk seasoning that I just released about a month ago. But I lived in New York for almost 10 years. And when I came back, I stayed with my mom for like 8 months. And, I came home from work, and she was making, collard greens and, with ham hocks and, neck bones. And I said, Mom, you could put, now, trying to just move away and make small choices. I said, you could put like smoked turkey in that. She said, really? I said, yeah. I mean, what do you think? The food police is going to come in and, ma'am, I know you're in there using neck bone, you're deviating from the, I said, but you could, right. Yeah. And she started laughing. I said, I said, it's your food. You can put whatever you want in it.
Right.
And she said, oh, yeah? I said, yeah. And so she's like, I'm going to try that. So I think it was like 3 or 4 weeks later, I was making it, with smoked turkey, which is still heavily salted because it's smoked,
yes,
but it's better than neck bones and,
fun
the
fact,
pork.
I use smoked turkey in my greens. Mm-hmm. Been doing it for... Once I quit the ham, the ham hocks,
but
we're done with that.
That generation, they're so like, and she said, what you in there cooking? I said, just got some collard greens with smoked turkey. And she said, She said, I want to try that. And I said, okay. And so she tried it, and she's been doing it ever since. This was 10 years ago. Yeah. But it's the small things. And, of course, because it's smoked, it still has a higher sodium content than non-smoked, but it's a step in the right direction.
Sure.
It's not perfection.
Sure.
It's just making it, making better decisions as you go.
It's a far less saltier meat,
right,
than the whole ham just stuck in there. That's a
and it's better for you because I tried to eat, I think it was neck bones and ham hocks, and oh my God, the grease. It was I think that was about 8 years ago, and it was a lot of fat, grease, and I couldn't put it.
Yeah, no, I've I haven't had rib tips in I can't remember how long. My dad suffered from gout really bad. So he made a lot of he passed away, but he made a lot of radical health decisions. I mean, he quit all of it. He quit eating sausages and pork and all that kind of stuff. I mean, a cheat meal for him was 2 pieces of bacon. So and like you started off on this conversation, it is literally a life and death thing that we have to get our heads around and start making those health choices. For me, it was smoking cigarettes. But the benefits, you feel much better. You can experiment doing things with food that we hadn't talked about before, or known before. And also, like when our old school family members, when they get a little new tip, it's good to see them try it out. Now they cooking with smoked turkey.
Right.
Now they using just a little dash or something instead of the,
I think that, for me, my come to Jesus moment was me being in the ER with 190/114 blood pressure.
Sure.
That was real. That was tangible. It wasn't like, oh, the doctor said I need to do better. No, I was in the ER, and they said, we cannot let you leave.
Right.
That's pretty concrete. So I had to do something different. It was either that or have a stroke or a heart attack or both. So that was my defining moment. But I think other people's experiences, when I'm talking to my customers, I don't really get into that with them because you have to have your own journey. I don't get into, salt is bad for you. I never do that because everybody's experience is different. When they ask me, they'll be like, walking over and kind of like, what's that? I'm like, yeah, it's, And they're like, okay. And then I'll say, like, if it's a couple, hey, so which one of you have high blood pressure? They're like, well, me. And then we'll just have a conversation. I'll say, I think I'm in the high blood pressure club too. I think I'm the CEO of that. And they're like, no. And we start comparing numbers and it's just making better decisions. So I think that with the brand that I created, you have, like, I have jerk, I just released jerk seasoning. I have barbecue rubs. And so you can eat what you eat. It's not saying, well, you need to eat salads and broccoli all day, like, because I wouldn't do that.
Right.
But I think the market out here, they're not making it to where you can, make better choices, because it's like, and like I said, I really don't like to talk bad about other brands, because they're doing something.
Sure.
People tend to start there, because what else are you going to do? When I was diagnosed, nobody said, well, you need to start eating this. I didn't have like a dietitian to say, okay, well, just don't eat salt, but they don't tell you what you can do. Unless
Right.
you get a dietitian.
Right.
They just release you and that's it.
Right.
I was at Aurora's farmers market last year. I had a nurse who was actually in a booth. I think it was, she was from the health department. And she came over and she said, she says, they were telling me to come see you. I'm like, okay, I'm here. And then she said, yeah, my husband has high blood pressure. And I was listening to her because I know the story. And
Yep.
she said, she's a nurse. And she said, my husband has high blood pressure and he's not doing well. And I said, I said, how's he doing? Because I already know how he's doing. She said, he's sneaking salt in the house. And, and I understand
Bag
because.
of chips under the bed.
Right. She said, he's sneaking salt in the house and this and that. And I said, okay, yeah. And because I know that journey. And she bought a lot of things for him. And because I think that they think, they started like I did too with the stuff on the market. And they're like, no, I'm like, you know what? I was the same way. I was like, no, I can't do this with, the other brands. And so I started my own. And they try me because they're like, oh, I've never, heard of that. Vinegar spicy pepper or, buffalo spice or, these things. They don't have those type of flavors out there.
No, right.
And so people who don't have hypertension even buy from me because of the flavors. I'm an artist at heart and I write recipes. And I'm like, oh, you know what? I want sweet lime and onion, and I just write the recipe.
That sounds good.
That's one of my top sellers.
Girl, did you just make that up? That sounds good.
I did. People are like, I've never seen sweet lime and onion. I'm like, I wrote the recipe. I made it up. And
that sounds really good.
I wanted the juxtaposition. Lime is very tart, and sweet is the polar opposite of tart.
Right.
And so I wanted them together, and it's one of my top sellers. I wrote the recipe, I made it up, and it's one of my top sellers.
The time is 9:27 a.m. If you are just joining us, you are listening to and watching Good Morning Aurora, the second largest city's first daily news podcast. And we are here with the CEO of Jack Spice, Sabrina Lonzo. Sabrina, I got to be honest with you. I had a whole plan for how this interview was going to go.
Okay.
And it went nothing like I expected.
I'm sorry.
This was fun. No. I'm saying. This was.
So did you have questions written down?
I did, actually.
We can speed through them.
No, we don't have enough time. We really don't. This was a lot of fun.
Okay.
So here's what we're going to do. You're going to be at when does the farmer's market begin?
It starts June 7th.
June 7th. Okay, you will be at that farmer's market.
Yes, I will.
What we'll do is, can we come on out, give you the microphone, and have you say some words
for
the
course.
people? Okay.
Absolutely.
All right. Now, Jack Spice is on Instagram,
Yes.
Facebook,
Yes.
as well, and on June 7th, the farmers market returns right out here in the wonderful parking lot of Water Street Mall and adjacent to City Hall, right in front of it. So please come on out, check out Sabrina Lonzo and Jack Spice, and it sounds like your palate will definitely thank you. Last question. Do you have sauces and things like that? Or is it only dry spices and rubs?
I have dry spices right now. I have, 50 something, and I'm doing pickles. They'll be out in about 2 to 3 weeks.
Okay.
I have about 7 hot sauces that I've been working on since last year. One will be released in about a month, but I wrote at the beginning of the year 15 recipes for marinades, liquid marinades. So I imagine at least 5 of those will be out this year.
Okay.
And everything is salt-free.
Okay. Well, there you have it. So if anybody is going to be doing a barbecue, Jack Spice for the seasoning and Curtis for an extra plate. Right now, the time is 9:28 a.m. I want to say thank you very much to our dear friend Sabrina for coming on and telling us all about Jack Spice. We'll look forward to shouting you out more and doing more, and maybe even a taste test. I mean, I can see it. I can see it right now. Me dipping something.
Yeah, my hot sauce that I have coming out right now, it's called, the name that I gave it was Tangy Brawl because it's tangy on the front end and it has 4 peppers. So it's tangy on the front end. You have red and green jalapenos picking up the middle, and then you have habanero swooping up the back. So it's I'm going to be releasing that one out first in about a month.
What was the name of it again?
Tangy Brawl. Tangy, and then brawl, like a tussle fight.
Lord.
Because it's the tangy and the hot is they're kind of they're competing with each other, but it's really good. It's very tangy and spicy. Okay. So,
all right.
Yeah, all right. I think people will like it.
I appreciate getting to know you.
All right.
I appreciate meeting you.
All right, you too.
Really
Thank you so much for having me.
I really do. Absolutely. Jim Cherry, the author of Lion Communique, great friend. Thank you very much for this connection. Right about now, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go to a brief commercial. Stay tuned.
Being a local business in Chicago, we've always worked with community banks, but over time, those smaller banks started getting acquired by larger national footprint banks. It became time to work with Wintrust to meet our needs without having to have that big bank feel.
Wintrust understood what they wanted to accomplish, and they've increased in size 5 times over.
As we continue to grow, we're going to keep needing to borrow, so I'm sure they're going to love that.
Serving their needs. It's really the foundation of what Wintrust Commercial Banking is all about.
YEP gives me a lot of hope for the future, not just here locally, but as those kids go out into the world and they share their perspectives and their passions, it's going to be infectious. It's going to spread. So they're just an amazing organization that sets their partners and this community up for success. The future of this community and honestly the country and the world is bright with the kids that are on that YEP program because they're going to save the world. They're doing incredible work, and to just get to know them and learn about their passions was a very fulfilling experience for me. Without the Community Foundation, it would be much more difficult for Hesed House and so many other organizations here locally to enact our mission on a daily basis.
Way different. Hey, everybody. Good morning once again. Happy Tuesday. You are watching Good Morning Aurora, the second largest city's first daily news podcast. Our first guest on the show this morning was Sabrina Lonzo, the CEO of Jack Spice. Great conversation. Be sure to check her out June 7th at the Farmers Market. My second guest today is Alderman of the 5th Ward, Carl Franco. How are you, sir?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. I'm good. It's been like 2-3 years.
2 years, last election, just before the last election, and,
yep.
and 2023.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's right. Yeah, different setup and a different everything.
Yep.
So you recently wrote an op-ed for the Tribune, and we're going to talk about that today.
Okay.
The title of the op-ed is Partisan Concerns. The op-ed deals specifically with the last election, the most recent election here for mayor. I'll let you give a little bit about it, and then we'll start talking about it.
Okay. Well, so the partisan concern is that we are a nonpartisan form of government.
Sure.
And apparently it's been working well for a long time. And we have a number of registered Republicans and Democrats on the city council. Never talk about ideology, never talk about that. We just basically, you run a city government with facts and data and reality.
Right.
You know, an issue is an issue. It doesn't matter what side of the aisle you're on. Works out well. In this last election, though, what has happened because of Democratic money from Springfield, and I'm going to say the governor's office injected a lot of money for the mayor-elect's group to come in.
Right.
It's a little bit different now. You know, when it was more of a Democrat versus whatever. Excuse me.
Right.
And I think that's a slippery slope to go down because I think overall people govern better when they're not beholden to ideologies left or right.
Okay.
And I just think it's better. You know, you put all that to the side. But I think now we're getting into a slippery slope of that. Maybe partisan politics are getting into this.
Right.
So as a Democrat myself, I'm not really happy about this because I think that, first of all, I think this particular group coming in has a little bit more extreme views, radical views, more socialist type of things. But with that said, I don't know that I like Springfield basically getting involved with local government.
Putting their thumb on the scale.
Well, yeah, they kind of are. So now are we going to go in, we're going to have a Democratic group come in versus a Republican group in the future? Are we going to be battling left and right? I hope not because, you know, as we know for the last 8 years, you can even go further, but last 8 years we've done wonderful. And I just don't think we want to get into that mess. So we'll see how it goes. But I just don't like where we're going. I think we're on that edge now of going that partisan way, and I just don't think it's as productive as it would be if we stay true to our form, which is nonpartisan.
Should there be any? And I want to, because there's always going to be Democratic involvement or perhaps Republican involvement. But should there be support or what have you from Springfield? Period.
Well, if it comes in the form of an issue, a particular topic,
Okay.
as opposed to ideologies. So let's say we need some funding, we want to do something, and we need some help from Springfield to fund a project that the city council agrees on, the mayor's office agrees on, you come in and do that. But if you're just saying we want to bring in money to further our cause, whatever it is, without the city really needing that, that's a little bit different.
Gotcha.
And obviously there's a number of things that go into that. I just don't like that. And again, if you do that, and the other component of that too is if you do the partisan thing a little bit like it's going now, and you don't bring in experts and people who know what they're doing, then we're going to have a problem of competency.
Okay.
You know, who can do the job? Well, we're bringing him in because he's a Democrat. We're bringing him in. That's not good. I want the best people working for us.
Right.
And I don't know that partisan politics lends itself to that. So, you know, we see what's happening in national government right now with the president. He's
Yes.
bringing all these people that really don't know what they're doing. And one day we're doing this, then we're retracting it. I don't like that. I want the best and the brightest in there. So I think
Right.
nonpartisan lends itself more to that.
I want to read. From the op-ed here. It says there's a lot of concern and disappointment in Aurora with regards to Mayor Urban's loss in his re-election bid. As an elected official, I have received dozens of calls from business leaders and constituents fearful of the potential radical changes that may occur. There is, in many cases, a lot of times the individual has to change, despite their pronouncements. The individual has to change once they assume that office.
Right.
Do you see any of that potentially happening, or
It's the unknown right now. So because the mayor-elect has never really governed anywhere before, you know, he's campaigned a lot, so we don't know. We don't know. If you look at the campaign rhetoric, it's a scary proposition. You know, first of all, I have had a number of people call me, the business community, my constituents, and the police. And let's just start with the public safety component.
Okay.
When you, and this is what we got to go with because we don't know anything different. A couple years ago, the same group tried to frame a couple of police officers saying they did something inappropriate on a traffic stop, basically jeopardizing the livelihood of these police officers for their political gain at the time. We found it wasn't true. The body camera showed it wasn't true. The state's attorney says it wasn't true. But that's not a good sign. Then you call the police department corrupt. Then you basically vote against everything, all resources for the police department, and then you vote against cameras in the outlet mall that catch criminals for shoplifting. That tells you something. I mean, you may change, but that's all we know right now.
Sure.
So if you're going into that, that's all you know, hoping that, you know,
Sure.
when you get in office, it change you. All right, maybe it will, maybe it won't, but we don't know that. So that's a scary thing for me because, you know, we built this city on a number of different platforms, but one is safety. And safety is number one. So when you have the police department a little concerned about that based on what has transpired, that's a tough one. So we'll see
Right.
how that goes. And that's just one portion of it. You know, economic development, business leaders have already called me and said, had I known this was going to go this way, I would have never brought my business to Aurora. So again, we don't know. But what we've seen so far, the campaign rhetoric, will lead you to believe that it's not going to go well. But we'll see.
Do you think that there's any potential for businesses that are already established and are already doing business in Aurora to leave?
Well, you know, I think the first 6 months are going to tell.
Okay.
I think, you know, let's be honest about this. The city of Aurora been here since 1837. The business community, the residents, the whole picture is bigger than an individual. It's bigger than me. It's bigger
Absolutely.
than Irvin. It's bigger than Lash. It's bigger than everybody.
Absolutely.
We come and go. But the institutions like the Paramount and some of these restaurants we've had for a while and the new ones that are coming in to start their own
Right.
type of tradition, they're going to be here long after we're gone. So I think at the end of the day, that will hold up. You know, that will bridge any kind of problems that are going to happen. So I'm hopeful of that. So let's just hope that institutional knowledge and all that, you know, holds firm. I think it will.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, I've had so many people call me and say, I need to get involved more because I didn't know this was going to happen. So there's going to be an outcry from the people like, we like the trajectory we're on. We like the path we're on. Please don't change it.
Right.
And then we'll see. Sometimes, what I don't like is when people campaign a certain way and then they get in office and they change their tune quickly. I'm like, why couldn't you tell us, why couldn't you be sincere before?
Sure.
So even that lack of sincerity, even if it goes the way of competence and
Right.
the whole thing, I just don't like why you couldn't say that on the campaign trail. I don't. That's being a politician more than a public servant.
I get
If
it.
you really feel that the police are doing a good job, but you're campaigning that they're not, no, that's no good because now I can't trust you going in. So we'll see how that flies out. But there's a lot of concerns with that.
Right.
But that's the political part of it, which I'd like to think at this level we're more public servants than politicians. But we'll see what happens.
So for the longest time, I think it's Mr. Cunningham with Kane County
Yep,
elections.
Yep.
For the longest time, he had always been, I've been reading his articles before and after every election. He's always bemoaned how bad participation was. Excuse me. Participation in this last election was higher than ever and everything. But I guess my question for you is with the recent changes and everybody that is coming on board and everything, like, what do you op-ed aside for the moment, what do you personally see as the next 5 years or the next tenureship or the next, 5 or 10 years with things that I've already started? I mean, it seems like you believe that there is a potential for a downgrade, but the opposite is most likely going to happen. Is that a fair way to see it?
Yes.
I want to, because I
Yeah.
want to respect the anxiety, I guess, but I'm also getting from you, and I know this of you, like, you do see the positive, what's happening now, the trajectory and its longevity. So I'm wondering, like, which do you think is the more likely outcome in this next?
Well, the more likely outcome is we stay the course.
Sure.
It's because, I come in there, I'm a new mayor, and I've never been a mayor before, I've never governed before, and the business community comes in and says, this is how we've worked well. This is how we've created wealth. This is how we provided to the city. I don't know that I'm sitting there thinking, I want to go a different way because success just doesn't work for me. So I think once it's ingrained in the new administration, this is the successful formula, and you don't want to be a one-term administration, I think that'll hold for them.
Right.
Now, but the concern is, you would have thought that in Washington, D.C. too. They're tearing down the house. So there's an example of somebody coming in that when they get in, it'll be different. No, they've actually gone more extreme. I'm not saying it's going to happen here, but
Right.
but it's actually happening in our country. So it's not far-fetched to think that you're coming in, guns a-blazing, and you're going to keep those guns a-blazing, and go down that route, as opposed to finding common ground, finding sanity, the right way to do things. So, but I do think in this particular situation will probably hold.
Right. Read a little bit more from our op-ed. Excuse me. It's important to note that over the last 8 years of the urban administration, the city of Aurora has received numerous positive accolades. Those include one of the safest cities, diverse cities, affordable housing, great place to raise a family, top 10 in the world for engaging its citizens, and much more. There were vacant buildings for over 50 years that are now inhabited with residents and commercial businesses. Many describe this period as Aurora's renaissance. All this was accomplished with Mayor Urban's leadership and a nonpartisan form of government. Now, however, because the governor of Illinois chose to help finance an activist socialist because of his apparent disdain for Mayor Urban, we have become, in reality, a partisan city. Here's the question. A lot of people would say we were already a partisan city. This last election just exposed it. What would you say to that?
Well, I would say that let's just go back. When people go on social media, they read things like, "Oh, that must be true." You need to look at things through a certain lens. So when the mayor ran for governor, he runs as a Republican, and everybody says, "I had no idea it was a Republican."
About as partisan as you could get.
You think about
Sure.
that, and you look at Aurora, and you don't even know who the mayor is. That's a diverse city. They got all this going on. The mayor, if he's anything, is probably a Democrat, but we don't know because he's not governing a certain way. So the fact that they didn't know, perfect. We don't want to know by looking at the administration if we're left or right. We look at issues. So I think that's. I don't know that we were partisan. I went knocking on doors with the mayor, and somebody would ask that question, and I said, "Well, he's a Republican. I'm a Democrat. He's black. I'm white. It works. Everything works because we're
Right.
doing it the right way, and we don't have those preconceived notions in
Right.
our head. So I don't know that we were partisan. You know,
Okay.
I'm a Democrat,
Okay.
but I,
Yeah.
you know, I'm a registered Democrat, but I don't govern as a Democrat. I govern with common sense, and I think at the end of the day, that's the term we got to keep using. What does common sense do in this particular situation? Here's an issue. You know, is left ideologies on it? There's right ideologies, but what does common sense tell you? Because we're a city of Aurora. And when you're in your city government, you run things. It's not like being a senator or congressman. You don't run things, you vote. You almost have to use common sense just because of your government, like governors do, like mayors do. So I don't know that we have been partisan, but this might put us on that track to partisan.
Right.
And I, you know, even though it's kind of my party, although I don't believe in some of those far left things, I don't want it here. I want just look at the issues, common sense. So I don't know that there was truth coming in this. I really don't.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So the reason, here's where that came from. You know, doing this program and posting or sharing about different things, everything from a blood drive to a popcorn thing at Banana Split. You do get these people in these comments who say stuff like, "Oh, another far right project by the Irvin administration," or another whatever. So, you know, I was really thinking about that because it seems at least that people have always had that at the forefront of their mind, no matter what they were doing. And there's very few people who don't think that way.
Well, I think social media.
Very few people that don't think that
Yeah,
way.
I think social media has hurt this country terribly.
Okay.
It's a cesspool now. You have people coming out with opinions. We don't know where those opinions came from. We don't know. I mean, there's literally people in our city that go on social media for sport just to create chaos on social media, say something, and they sit back and watch everybody argue about it. That's not what we should be doing. And actually, people believe that kind of stuff. So I think social media has given people a voice, but people a voice without knowledge. Now, the way I like to give people a voice is what we've been doing. You give people a voice through the LGBTQ Commission and the Commission for Disabled, the Commission for Seniors, those commissions or boards for representing ethnicities that didn't have a voice before. Those are the kind of voices we like because it's organized. There's face-to-face meetings, not somebody sitting around there trying to, you know, anarchists trying to screw things up. So I like that way of giving a voice better than some of these people that just say this and that about the other things. So I you know, when I hear that's a left thing, a right thing, that's what they do. And I don't think that that's necessarily who we are. You know, we wouldn't have got all these accolades and all this recognition over the years if we had certain ideological thoughts. We just wouldn't. You know, if we were far left and far right. So, and if you get, and really when you look at it, if people say this is a far left thing and this is a far right thing, perfect. Right? Now we're probably doing the right thing, was probably in the middle.
Okay.
But it's a perception of people seeing it out there. So there's hardcore Democrats, hardcore Republicans that want us to go that way, but that doesn't work. So I don't know. That voice to an individual on the internet, to me, is like, all right, next, we need to have organizations. We need to have structure. That's when you get a good opinion.
Right.
Because people working, I'm sitting in a room with you, and we got to work things out. It's better than me sitting on the internet just saying, well, I read this somewhere, and I'm going to repeat it.
Sure.
It just doesn't work.
Sure. So when you now the article does mention that you've spoken to businesses and constituents as well, like those conversations though, when they happen, I mean, you know, I'm not a Fifth Ward resident, but those conversations when they happen, like, do they end up like this, where we have kind of a trajectory to the front, or do you listen to them and hear them out and hear what they have to say, because maybe it's not the time to provide that.
Well, it's just sharing of information.
Okay.
So I haven't really talked to my constituents philosophically.
Okay.
It's like issue to issue. There'll be, I think going forward, there'll be some philosophical discussions.
Okay.
I think most of the people in my ward are, they liked how we were doing before.
Sure.
So, and I've gotten a lot of calls from them, one-on-ones about, their concerns. I feel like I've been a therapist for the last 2 weeks, talking people off the ledge. So it's not going to be that bad. It shouldn't be that bad. You have the city council still,
Right.
That's hopefully do the right things depending on the issue that comes across from us. So there's that firewall, I guess, in case things get a little nutty. But I really don't have philosophical comments. It's like, all right, this development's coming. We're doing spring cleaning this week. There's a development going over here. We're going to do taxes over here from this revenue source,
Right.
and how the snow plowing is going to go this year, all that kind of stuff. But it's just issue based pretty much when I talk to people.
Are you familiar with the SWOT analysis?
No.
So SWOT is an acronym. SWOT.
Okay.
Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats.
Okay.
New administration coming. May 12th is the day?
May 13th.
May 3rd. Okay, yeah, May 13th is the day. What's the strengths that you can see?
The strength?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's a good question. Well, I guess the strength could be if they continue to say, we want to be a voice of the people. You're here for all the people. Okay, good, because that's what we have been doing before. So I guess the strength would be understanding that's important to do,
Mm-hmm.
but how are you going to get from point A to point B? Because we feel this last administration has done that. But that would be a strength to continue that philosophy. How that roadmap comes out, there'll be different. So I think that would be a strength.
Okay. What's the W?
Well, the weakness is you have to get over all the campaign rhetoric. I mean, think about it. All the things they've said. I mean, I can go this for hours about some of the behavior that has happened on the campaign trail, starting with my election a couple years ago. That's really continued. There's a lot of people upset that their houses were stalked and their families were creeped out by some of these things and this despicable things. That's a weakness, because at the end of the day, I can teach you about city government. I can teach you certain things, but if you have a bad behavior, if you don't have integrity and character, I can't teach that.
That's a character issue,
that ship is stale. So that's a weakness. Okay. Can't have that, because I'd rather have somebody who doesn't know what they're doing, but has got good character and integrity, as opposed to somebody who has no character and integrity. They think they know everything. So that's what I would say is a weakness.
What about the opportunity?
Well, the opportunity for this coming in, I guess, is an opportunity to, I don't know, work around grievances that we may have had with each other.
Okay.
Bring everybody to the table, because you're going to have to do that. So I think that's an opportunity to, whatever you were thinking before, we're going to talk about it now, because we have this opportunity to see where we're at. Now, I think at the end of the day, our ships are all sailing in the same direction.
Right.
But are we taking a cruise ship? Are we taking a motorboat? How are we getting there? So I think the opportunity to discuss that is there too.
What are the threats?
Well, the threats is public safety. Let's just be clear. We just saw that the police chief is resigning. Why? I haven't talked to him. I don't know. But isn't that kind of coincidental? So I think because, and I used, an air traffic controller, which I was, as firemen, as police officers, when you're in that public safety thing, you get a close-knit group of people. Mm-hmm. And you don't like people commenting poorly on the institution of what you do, because you're providing it every day. So I think what we may see, the threat is, we see police officers leave. They're eligible to go, but they're going to go. Do we see that the lateral hiring that we did is not going to continue to happen? The lateral hiring is good, because you don't have to take a person from step one all the way up. They've already know some things, so it's cheaper and we get them in there quicker. So are we going to continue with that? So the threat, I think, is how our public safety officials feel going forward. And if they don't like it, they're going to either go somewhere else or retire early. Now we lose experience and we lose volume.
Sure.
And you don't hire a police officer today and on Friday they're ready to go.
Right.
It takes time. So we have to fill in that, and that's a problem too. So I think that's the threat of how our institutions feel this is going forward and what they do in reciprocation to that.
For those unfamiliar, lateral hires are police officers coming from other departments into our city, and City of Aurora gives them, I believe, a competitive bonus too.
They do.
For becoming a lateral hire.
Yes, right. And we've had a lot of people wanting to come to Aurora because the pay reference to other towns is good, and the morale. I talked to some police officers the other day who've had police officers in their family for decades, and they said the morale here has never been better under this administration.
Yeah.
So when you have the resources provided by the city council, when morale is good, where crime is down, you tell me you got no place to go but down.
Right.
You really don't. So you have to make sure that we continue on that pace. So that's my threat. That's my concern. If we had one shooting in downtown Aurora here this summer, everything kind of, the house of cards goes, because we've been fighting that perception for years, and it doesn't take long to tear it down. It takes a long time to build it. It doesn't take long to tear it down. So that's my concern too, that threat of public safety saying, all right, we're done.
Right. When I think personally, I think that this is a ripe opportunity to kind of continue with voter education. Mm-hmm. I think it's a really good time for perhaps yourself and just other bodies under individuals to continue to educate people and get the vote out. A person sent us a DM on Facebook, and they asked us our opinion. They said, do we think that, hey, do you guys think that this was a protest vote? I didn't know how to answer that, so I'll give that question. Do you think that this was a protest vote? I mean, eventually answer the question. But
Well, I mean, what are we protesting? I mean, think about it. I mean, if crime was up, if property values were down, if the tax rate was up, if we didn't do things for, the homeless, we have the homeless shelters, we have all the food things. I don't know where the protest would come from. I think well, now that I think about that, I think this is basically a reciprocation of the Trump administration. I really do. So what happens sometimes when you go far one way, the other side goes far the other way in protest of that. I think it's more of an indictment on where we're at nationwide, to tell you the truth. When the Lash affiliates put out this thing about Trump and Irvin, together, he's a Trumpster, the whole thing. What does that tell you? They're tying it into this far right.
are you talking about the mailer?
The mailer, right.
With the hat in the washing machine?
So is the movement because of Aurora, or is the movement an indication of what's happening nationwide? So because we're very far right and things are going bad, does the far left say we got to go this way? I don't think that's a smart thing to do, but I think it's a protest for that.
Okay.
Because if you just break it down to dollars and cents and reality, what are we talking about here? And really, I think part of it is, too, that the Democratic organization in Illinois, with Irvin at least, was a little bit concerned that we had a really good mayor who happens to be a Republican, who happens to be a veteran, a lawyer, an African-American. This is all good stuff. If I'm a Democrat, I'm kind of scared because he's doing a good job. So is this like we want to get him out of the game? So is it a protest for that? I mean, there's a lot of things that could be in the works here. But I think this movement is really a reflection of what's happening in Washington. I think if we had moderation in Washington, people doing the right things, then maybe this wouldn't have been like that.
Interesting.
And you see that nationwide, too. You see the protests from the left because of the far right. And so I think we're a sample size of that. I think this is a window on what's going forward. I don't like either one.
Yeah.
I like the middle because it's just better. So I think we're going to have this fight on local levels for a while until we get sanity back nationally. And then I think everything kind of feeds, where it should be.
Yeah, well, like you, I wouldn't want our town and city to be the petri dish for political experiments. Sure. I feel, though, that's why I kind of brought up that point, because I do feel that like there's so many people who are here in a very partisan fashion and have been for a long time. So that's why I was kind of like, well, is this like our first experiment with partisanship? But you answered that. There was one more part about this that I did want to ask about. 9:56 at the time. Here it is. Okay. We never talked about, excuse me, I got that. I'm sorry. It worked well. Common sense, reason, and a practical approach to issues drove the bus. The statistics and growth verify that. What I've witnessed over the decades is that moderates on both sides tend to breed discussion and results to address issues. On the other hand, extreme ideologies tend to create an absolutist atmosphere where it's my way or the highway. Now that is the sentence, sir. That is the sentence that I had to underline and put a star. My way or the highway. And that's kind of why I started off about in doing a SWOT analysis, like what do you feel things are going to go? Because, I don't know. I'm a question mark right there. I really don't know. I can't see that. I don't have a crystal ball, but I don't know. And again, this is where your voice matters because you are on the city council.
Well, I mean, I've been around long enough to know that when I talk to people that are so extreme,
yeah,
I can tell them things they don't want to hear. They shut me down.
Yep.
They literally don't want me to talk about it. I talk to my friends who are Republicans, who are moderate Republicans. We could talk all day long. They don't shut me down. I don't shut them down because they're reasonable, good ideas. But the fact that you can have a conversation is the thing. You can't. I mean, I've been in meetings where somebody, Lash affiliates come in, and I would tell them something. Oh, no, that's not right. I'm like, there was a meeting I went to, they wouldn't even let me talk. At a meeting a couple of years ago about a situation that was on the West Side, and they said, even though it was open to the public, I knew more than anybody else. They wouldn't let me chime in because they're absolute in their way. They didn't want to hear the other side. They didn't want to hear that. So I've experienced that on both sides. So that's why I say, you give me some moderates, we'll work in a room. We may not agree on everything, but you'll have a discussion.
Sure.
And they'll listen. But if you're not willing to listen because you know better than everybody else Why you know better than everybody else? What is your background know better? Well, just because I feel that way. It doesn't work. So I've been involved with it. I've seen it. It's just, but now could an absolute right and left work sometimes? Yes, but it tends not to. That's why I said it tends not to.
Okay.
But it tends to do more when you're talking about moderate opinions on the right and left. Because at the end of the day, the moderates just want the right thing to happen. And if you have a good idea and you're Republican, I'm a Democrat, I should say, that's a good idea. I can help you make it better.
Right.
That's how discussions, I think, used to go maybe before the mid-'90s when things started to deteriorate a little bit. But now it's like compromise. Oh, that's a 4-letter word. We can't have that. And that's unproductive.
Right.
And at the end of the day, you need to be productive for the citizenry. You just need to. So that's why I say that, about the extremes.
Right. Last question here. How can we, as listeners and citizens and people who live and love Aurora, how can we be good stewards in the city? What can we do now?
Well, we have to engage. We were awarded, 5 years ago, one of the top 10 engaged cities in the world. Well, I think with this this voter turnout might have been a little higher before, but it's still very low.
Yes.
It's just awful.
Yeah. It was just good now.
So I think the engagement of the community needs to have their voices come to city council meetings and say, this is what we liked from the last administration. Hear us, because this is working for us. And they need to involve the new administration with their thoughts and their philosophies. They were sitting on the sidelines too long. And I can go there and say what my constituents want. And people are like, okay, that sounds good. But if I got 20 guys in my constituents coming to the city council meeting and said, this is what we want to see, and it's reasonable, that will make the difference. So I think the engagement, they need to let people know what was working, what wasn't, and pressure them to do the good things and pressure them to get rid of the bad things. So I think it's just more people involved. When you campaign, it's about the people. Well, when the people speak, you better listen. And
Right.
I think that's what we need to do. So all these people that didn't vote, it's on you now. If you didn't vote and you didn't like the outcome of the election, it's on you to get out there and tell the administration what you liked about that. Even though you didn't vote, now it's on you. Because the people that did vote the way you wanted, we did our job. But if you feel that this administration coming in is not what you wanted, then tell them that. You have to tell them that. So I think that's how we're going to get over that.
Yeah. I like engagement. I really do. I like engagement. I like when people chew the fat over the issues and things like that. I think it's a great time to learn something if you've never known it before. I think that political engagement is really key, and there's a lot of ways that people can be involved and serve their community without being a politician. You can really make a good impact if you know what the facts are, how to help people, how to get started, and how to engage. So
Well, right. And you know what? It's hard to just come in and that. Like, you've never done it before and all of a sudden doing it. I came into this, I was 56 years old when I got this job. I had already been on boards for 20 years and the park district trustee and all these different things. So I kind of knew how to engage, how to work with people. But I didn't know as well when I was 27 as I did when I was 56. You just learn through life. So I think people have to learn how to engage in addition.
Sure.
How to listen, how to give your opinion in the right format so people can understand. And I think once people get used to that, then we could do it. So the new city council members, if you've never been around before, it's a learning curve. It's a growing process. I would hope they do, like most people do, come in and listen. Don't be coming out of the gates, I know everything, because you don't. You just don't. Because you're not old enough or you haven't been involved. Learn a little bit and then give your opinion based on that.
10:02 is the time. When a couple minutes over, I want to say thank you very much to Alderman Carl Franco for coming back onto the program.
Thank you.
Hope it's not another 2 years before we get a chance to see each other and chop it up again, sir.
No, whatever you listen. I can come every day if you want. If you pick a topic, we can talk about it every day.
But the article, rather the op-ed, it's titled "Partisan Concerns," and it appeared in the Chicago Tribune and Sun-Times. So all of the affiliate newspapers. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope that you guys have a fantastic, positive, and awesome rest of the day today. Good Morning Aurora will return tomorrow with more news and more information. Take care of yourself and each other.